What's going on, guys? MariK here, back with another Pokemon tier list. We ranked the starters, we ranked the starters' middle evolutions, and we ranked the final evolutions. And then we ranked baby Pokemon just for fun. And now today, we're going to be ranking legendary Pokemon. This is going to be a huge video. Probably the biggest tier list video as far as Pokemon goes, outside of ranking all 1,000 and however many, because I think there are a total of like 90 or more legendary Pokemon. I don't remember the exact count. And that's not including the mythicals. So, buckle up, grab a chair, get your snacks ready, and let's dive into this. So the way we're going to be ranking this, I guess we'll go ahead and explain this, is S rank is going to be like my all-time actual favorites that I can't just be like, well, I really like it. No, these are absolute favorites of mine. A rank are the ones that I really like. B rank is the ones that I like a lot. And then C is I like them a little. D is the ones I don't care for. And then F tier will be the ones that I absolutely hate. I know you guys gave us a lot of shit last time over putting too many Pokemon in S tier, and so we're starting off strong with Articuno going straight up to S tier. Competitively, Articuno has had its issues, especially once Stealth Rock came into play. In Gen 1, Articuno was an absolute monster, and I know that's because there was no split between special attack and defense, but design-wise, I love the cool blue color. I love the wings, just the tail, everything about it, even the head crest. It's just such a good fucking design. And clearly somebody at GameFreak seems to think so as well, or the Pokemon Company in general. Articuno was the only one of the three legendary birds not to get caught by the villain in the movie 2000. And he's the only one that got full art EXs in the Pokemon TCG when they did the Team Plasma set. Articuno got a full art. Zapdos and Moltres did not. And there are other instances as well, but honestly, I just love Articuno. I think he's a great Pokemon. I really would love to find a way to make it viable, but we're not going to get into that right now. Design-wise, I think it's an amazing bird Pokemon. Then we've got Galarian Articuno. Now again, because I said I'm not going to put too many Pokemon in S rank, I'm going to put it in A rank. Because it has a lot of the same factors that Articuno has. The tail is now this, like, shiny purple color. The wings, it's all purple. I don't like the head crest. I don't like the little mask thing it has, like a Mardi Gras mask. I'm not as fond of that. Psychic's a cool typing, it's one of my favorites, and its signature move is really fucking good as well. But like I said, I'm going to try not to put too many in S rank, so I think a good A rank is where that's going to go. Then we've got Zapdos. Zapdos again. This one, I feel like actually needs to go in A rank. First of all, it's a great design. I actually used to prefer Zapdos over Moltres when I was younger. I don't now, for reasons we'll get into when we get to Moltres. But it's a great design. It was a great Pokemon. It had great competitive builds. Zapdos stayed competitive far longer than Articuno and Moltres, and it didn't dip down in usage near as much as those two as well. Just a really fucking cool design. Plus, it's the only bird that got put in base set, so I mean, it's got that going for it. Then we've got Galarian Zapdos, and I almost was going to put this in a tier lower. I'm actually going to put it in A tier because I really like its design. The Galarian forms were actually really fucking solid. They took, classic legendaries, the original legendary trio, gave them new designs, new typings, abilities, the works, and it worked. They're fucking amazing. I don't particularly like that it's like a Roadrunner. I prefer my birds to fly, but I love the deep orange color. It's like its head design actually looks really intimidating for a bird, so I really like his design a lot. Then to complete the trio, we've got Moltres. And Moltres, again, I gotta put it in A tier. Like, it's a big fiery bird. It flaps its wings and little embers sparkle off of it. It's such a cool Pokemon. It's Pokemon Cry, not so much in the games, but like in the anime, especially in the Pokemon movie 2000 movie. I love the way it sounds. It just sounds so cool. All three of them do, honestly. Then we've got Galarian Moltres, which this thing is a beast in and of itself, and it's really wild, but I have to put it in S tier. It's one of the few instances where I like where they made a Pokemon black, because to me, black is like, oh, it's black, oh, it's the best color. It's not even like a color, it's whatever. But the different shades of light and dark pink to go with it just make this thing so menacing, and especially the way its model flaps its wings in the core games, it's so fucking cool. I hate it because it seems so edgy, but this one I just have to make an exception for. Then we're back to Kanto with Mewtwo, and I mean, obviously Mewtwo's got to go in A rank, right? It's Mewtwo. He's such a cool Pokemon. His backstory was really fucking cool. I don't know anybody that didn't love Pokemon the first movie. He's a really badass design too, and to think that he was created like this from something like Mew, he deserves it. He's basically Pokemon Frieza, except I hated Frieza. Now we're moving on to Johto. We've got Raikou, and again, yep, controversial. A rank, and trust me, it's gonna change. It's gonna change, I promise. Raikou is basically a giant saber-toothed tiger with a thunderbolt tail. He's such a fucking cool Pokemon, and honestly, the first generations just did so well. I feel like there are actually going to be more Pokemon going into the A tier than probably any other tier, just because legendary Pokemon have been designed so well over the various generations that it's kind of the opposite for me, that issue that we had with starter Pokemon. So moving right along, we got Entei, and Entei, again, he's going in A tier. He was one of the stars of the third movie with the Unknown, although the Unknown really didn't have much besides their power doing what they did. The movie was about Entei, all right, and he's a beast. He's just this giant volcano incarnate. I love his fucking design. He's actually the most intimidating of the three, almost as if he would be the leader of the three legendary beasts. Now, to round out this trio, we have Suicune, and I'm putting Suicune in S rank. I think Suicune is the most popular of the three Johto trio. I mean, he got his own game with Crystal, and even in the anime, if we don't count the movie, Suicune has more appearances than either of the beasts combined, I believe. And that could have also been to tie in with the actual Crystal game, but it's just I love its design so much. It has a perfect fucking shiny color, and yeah, I don't have anything else to say. Moving on to the next Gen 2 mascot, we've got Lugia, and Lugia, again, has to go S tier. Aside from its typing, which is a bit controversial that it's a psychic type, but it makes sense, especially since the first one we see in the movie is, it can speak telepathically. But it's a Pokemon that's in the water, it's got all these water moves, its lore is about it creating a 40-day storm and hiding deep in the sea to contain its own power, and then it also, honestly, it could be a dragon. based off its design, but it's definitely not. And I'm fine with it not be. But it's almost like it should be Psychic Water. But it's easily one of the most popular Pokemon by far. Card, whether it be in the games, whether it be in the TCG, the anime, it is just always at the top of everybody's list. Then rounding out the mascots, we've got Ho-Oh, and Ho-Oh again is going up there in S. It's a literal phoenix that can bring back dead Pokemon. It's only done it once that we've seen. Or as far as the myth goes, the legend. But it's a great fucking design. We've seen it since the very first episode. And then it has so much lore behind it and the entire Johto region that it seems like it's a much more important Pokemon to the Pokemon world than Lugia, especially since we've seen that Lugia can breed, and there are multiple Lugias, whereas Ho-Oh is just the one and only. I feel like it's not as popular as Lugia. I'm not really sure what the reason for it being, maybe just because it's a big bird versus this giant silver dragon creature, but they definitely both deserve to stand at the same tier. Moving on to Gen 3, we got the Reggie trio, and I really do like the Reggies. I don't like them as much as the Kanto and Johto trios, so we're going to put Regirock in B tier. I kind of bounce back and forth between which one I think is my favorite. I like Regirock a lot. I also like that when he's, when part of him is damaged, he just takes a random ass rock and just smacks it into his body and it becomes part of him. So he just kind of rebuilds himself wherever the fuck he feels like. The Reggies were also a really cool aspect of Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald with the way you had to obtain them. And you had to work for these. It was like the 3 legendary birds, you had to go get them. And they were in... Articuno was the hardest one to get as far as location. And then Raikou, Entei, and Suicune, if you weren't playing Crystal, you had to randomly encounter them before you could even hunt them down. The Reggies went so much farther. You had to do things to get their locations to even trigger. And then you had to read Braille, and it's like, this is shit that was made for kids. Like, they made this shit complicated for no fucking reason. If you wanted these Pokemon, you were gonna put the fucking work in. Then we got the second member of the Reggies, which is Regice. This is my personal favorite most of the time. I like Regice because I like symmetry, and Regirock definitely is not symmetrical, where Regice is very smooth and its angles are very sharp, but it's, I don't know, there's something about it just being a giant Pokemon made of ice, and I really like it. If we ignore its cry in the Mew and Lucario movie, it is easily my favorite of the 3. Its shiny is really not that much different, but it's a brighter blue that, depending on which version, which game you're in, it looks really fucking good. Then lastly, we have Registeel. Registeel's going to go in B as well. Registeel was my favorite at one point just because I like that he's balanced between his 2 defensive stats. However, his design to me leaves a bit to be desired. He was my favorite for a little bit because of, I remember pulling a full art of him way back. Was he Dragon's Exalted? Might have been that long ago. The really fucking pretty ass card when we first started getting full art cards. And I mean, he's a really cool Pokemon, but I don't think that I like his design as much as I like Regirock or even Regice. Then we're moving on to the Eon duo, and we've got Latias and Latios. Latias, I'm going to put in A tier. I really like these 2 Pokemon. Let's just go ahead and I'm going to put both of them in A tier. If we were including, say, their use in like competitive battling or anything like that, Latios would be in S tier because it was actually a really fucking solid member of my team. It actually replaced Gengar for me at one point. And not because Gengar was bad in any way, just because Latios had the same stats as far as its offense and its speed, but better HP, better defenses, and it being a dragon, it had so many more resistances that I could work with. But strictly design-wise, I like them both. I like Latios a little bit better, but not enough for either of them to be in a separate category. The red and the white and the blue and the gray contrast really well, and they're really cool ass Pokemon. Then we're gonna move on to the Weather Trio with Kyogre, and this beast is going straight up in S tier. First of all, it's a fucking giant blue orca that can flood the entire planet, and orcas are like one of my all-time favorite animals. I love marine life, but I especially love killer whales, and Kyogre fits the bill. He's such a cool ass Pokemon. And when it comes to Kyogre versus Groudon, I'm definitely team Kyogre because it's blue, because I like water types, and I prefer water animals to whatever the hell Groudon is supposed to be. But also it makes the games make a little bit more sense. So they're like, hey, we're going to use this giant ancient whale to raise the fucking water levels of the planet, versus we're going to resurrect this weird molten like chameleon that's going to dry up the oceans. It's weird. But I don't dislike Groudon, so let's go ahead and we'll put Groudon. I'm going to put Groudon in B tier. Because like I said, I like the ones in B tier. But I don't really like it enough to go in A. And I don't love it. It's not going in S. Groudon's color scheme works really well for it, and I like that it is kind of like this hulking thing. But unlike, say, like Nidoking, for example, which is also another hulking Pokemon, I don't feel like Groudon would have the ability to move with any kind of speed or urgency, and like, I just don't see it being able to do a lot of attacks that aren't just like smashing the ground to create an earthquake or throwing fire at you out of its mouth. Then rounding out the trio with Rayquaza going up in S tier. I love this thing. Rayquaza is literally the Pokemon that got me back into playing the Pokemon games. I had dropped off after Gold and Silver, so I missed out on Crystal, I missed out on Ruby and Sapphire, and then I got Emerald for, it might have been a birthday present. I don't remember what it was for, but I got Emerald alongside with Leaf Green, and just the box was just so captivating. Rayquaza is it's a design that is so good that it's a better design than Lugia and Ho-Oh. And I wouldn't have the balls to say that, but based on the whole, like, the big Pokemon voting thing they did back in, I think, 2020, Rayquaza was well ahead of Lugia and Ho-Oh, and for good reason. He's just an amazing-ass Pokemon. Then we got Uxie, Mesprit, and Azelf. I actually do like these things. I like Uxie. I like the lore behind Uxie. So they're all supposed to embody different emotions. They all gave different emotions to humanity, right? But Uxie's got this cool thing where basically its eyes are closed all the time. Like, it's Brock in a Pokemon form. If, when Brock opened his eyes, if you saw its eyes, then you lost your soul. So it's like if Brock's eyes were Millennium items that sent you to the Shadow Realm, that's what this Pokemon is. It's really weird, but it's really cool, and he's actually fun to use in battle because of the way his stats work. He's really bulky, but he's still got enough offensive presence to be able to do something. And personally, I think this one's my favorite of the three. Mesprit, on the other hand, this is the one I think its stats are balanced. But I just don't like its design as much. It's going in C tier just because I don't know. Its design just isn't as good as Uxie or as Zelf for me. And also it's the one that's like when you go to their island and it's like, oh, there's Uxie. Oh, there's a Zelf. And then Mesprit's like, hey, you remember how fun it was to go chase after the 3 legendary beasts in Johto? Let's do that. Let's see how fun that is. And then you're just like, fuck. Now, it wasn't as... I don't think it was as frustrating. Because, I mean, obviously you could just follow it on the map. But Raikou, Entei, and Suicune, you had to just straight up wait until they randomly appeared. Which is still kind of a thing that I'm just kind of like, how did they have the coding to do such a thing back then? To just determine, because some people would run into them almost right after Ekritique, and some people wouldn't see them until fucking, like, the 8th badge. It's just... But yeah, Mesprit to me is just kind of eh. And then we got a Zelf. A Zelf was a really... I think a Zelf was the one that had the most competitive presence. It's really fast. He hits really hard. I like the blue. And I do kind of like his little head shape. I don't want to say crest, because it's actually his whole head. And it looks good. I don't like it as much as Uxie. But I don't like it enough to put it down there with poor old Mesprit. Moving on to the Creation Trio. I forgot what they were called. We got Dialga. I love Dialga. Dialga's going in fucking A tier. He's such a cool fucking design. The blue, the silver, he's a fucking steel-type dragon. He controls time. His signature move is literally called Roar of Time. And it's basically a dragon-type hyper beam. It's pretty fucking dope. And, I remember going to Toys R Us with some friends of mine. And if you pre-ordered the game, you got this cool little stylus that had Dialga or Palkia on it. And we actually got... One of the guys behind the counter was like, I'll just sell them to you for like $5. I was like, fucking done. Because I didn't want to pre-order the game. I didn't even have a DS at the time because I really didn't touch my Game Boy much if it wasn't Pokemon. So Game Boy Advance was good enough until... Well, I think I had an SP at the time, but... I didn't need a DS yet. Dialga Origin, on the other hand, this thing came out with Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. I think that's what they were called. I don't care for this thing. It's like if Dialga fused with Arceus, and it's not a good origin design to me in the way Giratina had a cool origin design. It's really weird, and it's like, hey, we understand that you go along with Arceus, so we're going to give you your own weird llama form. I don't know. I got Palkia. I like Palkia, but I don't think I like it as much as Dialga. I think I can put Palkia comfortably down here in B tier. It's a cool Pokemon. Water Dragon is an absolutely amazing typing, especially because back then Fairy wasn't a thing, so Dragon was the only thing you could hit it super effectively with. And, I mean, that's really saying something. It just, the design doesn't really do it much for me. It's such a lightish color of pink, it's almost not even. It's like if, like, some freaking really, like, it's like if water and a crayon mixed, and it's like, that's the color of the water. It's not even pink to me. So, and I mean, Pearl isn't really pink, but they tried to make everything, like, it's like blue versus pink for the color schemes, and its design was just too bland color-wise. And with the origin form, they tried to add some of that color to the game, to the Pokemon, but again, it's a really fucking weird, it's just a really weird design. Like, Arceus at least looks decent for what it is, and this is just like they just tried to make Dialga and Palkia just look like a different Arceus, and it doesn't work well for them. Up next, we've got Heatran. I like Heatran, but I don't... I can't say I can put him above a B tier. He's a cool little lava monster that's got some metal on him. He's pretty damn good and competitive. I've used him a few times despite the fact that he's not one of my favorite Pokemon. But his design isn't bad. I don't know what makes him such a legendary. He's just kind of like like I said, he's just a lava thing with some metal bracelets and a metal head. Then we've got Regigigas, the king of the Regis. Not really. We're gonna go ahead and put him in B tier. He's actually the OG Regi as far as the Pokemon universe lore goes. He's basically like the terra firma of the Pokemon world. I mean, he's massive. He was said to have pulled the continents to their current locations. That's how big of a behemoth this guy is. And then he was sealed away because of his power. He's honestly not that great to use because he is just a normal type Pokemon, and slow start really sucks, but I mean, you'd have a slow start too if you were sealed away for millions of years. Now we've got Giratina, and Giratina's altered form, I don't dislike it, but I'm going to go ahead and keep it in B tier. It's like a weird dragon centaur that's also like part centipede. The top half is pretty cool. His wings are nice. He's got the spiky golden parts that, you know, go up his neck. It's just, he's not a terrible design. I liked it when I encountered it in Diamond version, but then once we got the origin form with Platinum, it became just so outdated. Origin form, on the other hand, this thing has to go in S tier for me. Not only just because Platinum was such a good game. I mean, Gen 4 was great. Diamond and Pearl were amazing. Even though I'm not super big on the region, or even like some of the Pokemon, pretty solid starters. But the region itself is just not as fun because of just so much backtracking, I feel like. But it was a really fun game. Gen 4, the mechanics for Gen 4 were just pretty perfect as far as I'm concerned. And then Platinum just made them better and made them faster. That was the biggest issue with Gen 4, is things were so fucking slow. And then Platinum fixed that. Giratina's origin form is so much cooler. He's got like a dragonic serpent-like body. His legs have been replaced with spikes. His head is cooler and like closes to form like almost like an armored mask. And then his wings are, it's almost like as if the bones of a dragon's wings were still intact and like the flesh was no longer there. So it's still wrapped around the bones, but then the part of the wings that's supposed to be in between each of the bone pieces is no longer there. He's just a really cool fucking design. And Dragon Ghost is a cool typing too. Then we got Cresselia. I like Cresselia. It's actually pretty fun to use competitively because she's so fucking bulky. I think her design is pretty solid enough to put her in B tier. The colors are really almost like Easter-esque with just how soft the different shades of blue and purple and pink are. And I like how she's got like literally a crescent moon for a head to go along with the lore of Cresselia in-game. It's kind of weird that Cresselia and Darkrai are supposed to be like polar opposites, considering one's a legendary and one's a mythical Pokemon. If we take and ignore Darkrai, Cresselia on its own is a pretty solid design, and it's got a really fucking cool-ass shiny with some very vibrant colors. Moving on to Gen 5, we've got the Swords of Justice, and we've got Cobalion, or Cobalion, if you will. And I think I'm going to put him up in B tier. I think he's my favorite of the three. I think he's also the first one I feel like I remember catching in Gen 5. Steel Fighting is an interesting typing. I like Steel-type Pokemon. And just the blue, his little head crest is pretty neat. He's also, I believe he's the leader of the trio. which doesn't really have anything to do with it, but just to me, he has that cool factor that the other two kind of don't. Terrakion isn't a bad Pokemon. I don't dislike its design. He just has like a... almost like a... like he's a giant bulldog. Like he's got the build of something with like a really like thick ass torso, but then just the shortest of little like tiny legs. It's not bad. I feel like it's my least favorite of the three, even though I think competitively it was definitely the best. But it just, I mean, it's just various shades of brown, and it's just boring. I can see like a tiny bit of orange on it, but otherwise its design is just so lacking in comparison. Virizion, on the other hand, is very frail and like completely the opposite of kind of what I would want. I guess it goes for like that very like feminine doe look, which is fine. I feel like it also is going to go in C tier just because it doesn't really do much for me. The Paradox form completely fixes that because it looks really good as a shiny metal green deer looking Pokemon, but I don't dislike it, but I don't really have much of an attachment to it. Moving on to the other random trio, we've got Tornadus, which Tornadus was I believe the one I had. Tornadus was black version, and I think Thundurus was white version. And I like the genies. They're cool, I guess. I'll put him in B tier. Green and purple go really well together, and the genie design, it's not bad. They do have their Therian forms, and I'll be honest, I really like Tornadus' Therian form. He just becomes a green and purple bird. That's just kind of dope to me. He's going to go in A tier for his Therian form. I don't like the others as much when it comes to their Therian forms. Thundurus is cool. He's blue and purple. More like blue with like purple specks. And he's really good. I think both of his... I think all of the Genie Pokemon and their Therian forms are pretty solid. As far as his Therian form, I don't like it as much, but I don't know if I dislike it enough to put it down in... Yeah, I do. To put it down in C tier. He becomes like a weird... almost like a genie mermaid kind of thing, and yeah, it's awkward looking now that I think about it. We'll move to Landorus in a moment. Of course, now we've got the main trio with Reshiram, and I like Reshiram. It's a pretty good design. I actually was going to go with white version when the games were releasing because I wanted Zekrom. I thought Zekrom looked like a more intimidating dragon. But then when I kind of came around to Reshiram being more majestic and not so much a dragon that had to look fearsome, but more mystical. So I really kind of came around to Reshiram. I think Reshiram is a good A tier Pokemon. He's just a really dope Pokemon. He's kind of... I wish he had arms. That's kind of my only complaint about his design, but otherwise he's pretty solid. Zekrom's also pretty solid. I think the only thing that's weird with Zekrom is maybe just the fact that his wings are a little bit smaller, but then again, if I was going to hate on a Pokemon for that, then I couldn't love Dragonite as much as I do. I think Zekrom belongs in A tier as well. They were just really good legendary designs. Their lore isn't as magical, I guess, as the previous generations. Lugia and Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh especially has its lore. The Weather Trio and the Creation Trios, just there's so much more to them. But design-wise, they're still pretty solid. Moving back to the Genies, we've got Landorus, which we're going to put Landorus in B tier with the other two, although I would say he is my least favorite of the three when it comes to the genie forms. He's orange, that's cool, but something about his design, he just doesn't look as neat. His Therian form is pretty cool though, not as cool as Tornadus is. He's not like this cool bird. He becomes like almost like a weird like quadruped, like a lion or something. So definitely better looking than Thunderous's Therian form, but it's just not as cool as a big giant bird. Kyurem, the husk left over from Reshiram / Zekrom. I can't put this thing up in that high of a tier. I honestly kind of have to put it in C tier. I realize it's a shell of its former self, but it's like, it's not... The head is a cool design, but the rest of it is just like... It's just like it's already half dead. Now, when you combine him with Reshiram, or in this case, Zekrom, Kyurem Black is a really fucking solid design. Gotta put it up there in A tier. And we'll go ahead and put Reshiram, or Kyurem White up there as well. Really just cool designs, but then a really cool aspect with the fusion thing that we never saw again. That really just makes Gen 5 unique. Gen 5 also had a really solid storyline too. And then the fact that it was almost like a soft reboot, that there were no existing Pokemon in Black and White until post-game. So it kind of forced you to use these new Pokemon, which, I mean, every game does, but every game also lets you fall back on your favorites. Gen 5 was like, nah, fuck that. You're going to make new friends. And these two were just great friends to make. They're really fucking just awesome designs. One day, maybe, we'll get to see what the original dragon looked like, but for now, these two are the best we're going to get, and there's nothing wrong with that. Moving on to what is far from the best we can get. We're moving on to Gen 6, X and Y, and Xerneas. I don't like this thing. I'm not going to lie. I don't hate it. I don't really know that there's... I don't really know there's many designs I'm going to put down in F tier. I'm going to put Xerneas in D tier, and that might hurt some people's feelings, and I'm sorry. Gen 6 was just one of my least favorites, and the fact that it only had 3 legendaries to begin with is just, like, it just felt like they didn't even really want to try. It's almost just like they were like, hey, let's take Stantler and make it a legendary Pokemon. It just didn't do it for me at all. Yveltal, on the other hand, not a bad design. He's kind of cool. I mean, does he go in C tier? Does he belong up there in B tier? I feel like... I like what they were going for with it. I'll put it in C tier because he is a cool-ish design. The red and the black contrast really well together, but it's low on the B tier. Like, he's just, I don't know. Like I said, X and Y just didn't really do much for me. And speaking of a Pokemon that X and Y didn't do anything for, we've got Zygarde and its forms, and Zygarde 10%. I don't like it. I don't care for it. We're gonna put it down in D tier. Its design just isn't really for me. 50% is kind of cool. I'm gonna put it in C tier. It's just like a weird slug snake thing, almost like it's kind of like a serpent, but it definitely is not making any of the quick snake-like movements that you would expect from a Pokemon or a creature with this kind of like body shape. Now, 100% on the other end, this thing's pretty cool. I don't think it's cool enough to put it in A tier, but I do like its design. He actually looks like he'd be a threatening, if you came across it, you're like, holy shit, we're about to have a real battle. Moving into Gen 7, and we got Type Null, and this thing's got to go in F tier. I don't even, you can't even tell what it is. Like, what the lore was like, they were trying to create something like Arceus or something. Because, like, Arceus had its plates that changed its type, and Type Null and Savali have the same thing. But it's like this weird, almost like someone put together like 18 different animals and just said, yeah, sure, let's just go with it. It's just, I don't like its design. Savali, I don't really care for its design either. I'm gonna put it down there in F tier as well. It just, like, first of all, it's a thing that Type Null, it shouldn't even be a legendary. It's a Pokemon there's one of because they made this one fucking thing. And I mean, yeah, you could say the same thing for Mewtwo, I guess. But Mewtwo was created as a clone of Mew, which was a mythical. So it makes sense that it has some kind of status. Whereas Type Null is just a thing that they created because they could. Like one of those weird Pokemon that you'll see on, like, fucking Etsy or on Wish or something that looks like it's like 6 different Pokemon stitched together. And then somehow it evolved. It evolved and became a thing that's still weird like that, but looks a little bit more like a Pokemon. But it just, I don't understand why. And it just, yeah, it just doesn't do it. Moving on to the Island Guardians, we got Tapu Koko. I think this one's pretty much everybody's favorite of the 4, or at least the collective favorite. Tapu Koko is actually going to go up there in A tier for me. I really liked its design. As far as its placement in the story, I didn't care so much, but I like its design, and I like that it's a really fast electric type. So, it fits its theme really well. The colors work for me, despite the fact that I'm not a big person on the color yellow. I like it. I like it overall. Tapu Lele, I don't really like. I don't like, this is my least favorite one. I'm going to put it in D tier. I don't care for it. I don't even think I've ever used this one. Tapu Bulu, on the other hand, is pretty solid. Really fun to use for a grass-type Pokemon. And, I don't know, his design just, it has more of that island kind of feel to me, which is what they were going for with all of these. And that's something that for some reason Tapu Lele just doesn't capture for me. Same thing with Tapu Fini. I think Tapu Fini is a really solid design. I like that she's kind of like this thing in a shell, so it goes along with the water island aspect. Plus it's purple. It's like a deep purple and a light blue color. It really contrasts well, whereas Tapu Lele is just like pink and then more pink. And I'm just, I'm not big on that. Then we get Nebby here, Cosmog. Cosmog, I think, can go in C tier. I don't really have any negative feelings towards it, but I just don't care. Cosmoem, I think is what this one was called. I like this one better, especially even though it's like supposed to be super tiny. I like the fact that it like weighs so much that like even Thor's hammer wouldn't weigh as much as this thing. Like its core is like an entire fucking galaxy or something. It's fucking, and it just looks cool when you look at it. And then the fact that that thing evolves into Solgaleo. This thing's going in A tier. I loved Solgaleo. Literally like a Liger Zero in a Pokemon form. And it's so fucking just, it was just such a, there was no hesitation when the two legends were revealed for Sun and Moon. I picked Solgaleo immediately. I just didn't care. There was no chance in hell. Really fucking cool design. Even it's shiny, though it's shiny could be a little less sunburnt looking as people have described it, but still looks pretty fucking good. Lunala, though, I don't dislike its design. So it can go in B tier. It is a pretty decent design. It's just this cool giant, like, cosmic looking bat thing. So I don't, like I said, I don't hate its design, but it's just, it's not as cool as the giant fucking Liger Zero. Then we got Necrozma. I don't really care for this thing. Like, he just kind of almost didn't feel like a Pokemon to me. Kind of like he went with the Ultra Beasts, except I don't think he actually did. I'm pretty sure he was a Pokemon. His design's just kind of eh. When he takes over, you know, Solgaleo, and becomes Duskmane. This thing's pretty cool. It's not as cool as actual Solgaleo, but it is... The thing is, if it was Solgaleo with pieces of Necrozma on it, it would look cool. But the way it's like this weird, like, light form underneath it, I just don't really care for it as much. Same thing with Lunar Wings. Like, it's cool, but it's not... It just doesn't feel as cool as the original. And then there's this thing, which is like its full whatever. I don't like it. I won't put it down in F tier, but it's just like it just felt like they were trying to go a route that I just didn't care for. I also didn't play Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, so these three I'm going strictly off the designs for. And this one just seems so ridiculous, and as far as my knowledge goes in the game, in the story, it was pretty ridiculous as well. Then we're moving on to Gen 8. There was a good bit in Gen 8. Wow. So we've got Zacian, one of the heroes. I'm going to put Zacian in B tier. It's a decent design, but it just feels... I don't know. It feels like it's a little too normal, which is not a bad thing, but the way its design is, to me... I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. When you give it the sword and it puts a sword in its mouth and then it becomes like a Legend of Zelda character, it's cooler. I like the almost like golden wings that it gains, but the fact that it's literally got a sword in its mouth is dumb to me. Like, you could have went kind of like the Zoids route, where like it grew blades or something, but the fact that it's just like you just picked up a knife or a sword and just stuck it in its mouth and just kind of, I don't, because then any Pokemon could do that, and it's just kind of, it's a weird thing where Pokemon and non-natural things happen, then it's just like, it's just a sword. At least with Zamazenta, and I like Zamazenta's design way more than Zacian both forms. I don't know if I want to put them in A tier. I think I'll leave him in B. He's definitely a B plus tier. I just like his unarmored design is just better. I like the contrast between the dark red and the dark blue colors. And then his shield form is really cool. Definitely a B plus as well. I like it better because it's not a canine looking creature holding a fucking shield in its mouth. Like, the shield bonds with him and becomes the form. Like, again, we're going back to Zoids, like a shield liger. It's just, it becomes one whole thing instead of just a creature with a sword in its mouth. And we've got Eternatus. I don't like this thing. It's going in F tier. There were so many things about it, especially with the story, that kind of made Sword and Shield fall flat to me. It did make the villain character cooler. It made him... I liked his motives. But, I don't know. This thing just... Again, its design was really weird. And then when you see it in, like, Pokemon Journeys, it's this really weird, like, CGI creature that just doesn't even look like it. It doesn't blend well with the animation style of Pokemon. There was nothing doing any favors for it. Then we got Kubfu. I don't really hate this thing. I don't really dislike it. It's going in C tier. He's just like this weird little karate baby bear that you get. Almost like a little, like a Care Bear made for a boy. Like, he just, I don't know. I didn't see where he really tied into the story much. The first DLC for Sword and Shield wasn't nearly as good as the second, but I mean, when you compare getting, a Kung Fu bear to new forms for the original Legendary Trio, it's hard to compare the two. We're going to put Urshifu, or whatever he was called, we're going to put him up here in C tier as well. Like I said, no hate towards him, I just kind of... you know, I just don't anything. I don't have negative feelings towards them. They're just, honestly, if I didn't see them, I'd forget they exist. Now, however, GameFreak did not forget that the Reggies exist when they created 2 new Reggies with Regieleki and then Reggie Drago. We'll get to him in a minute. I like these things. I don't like them better than the originals. I really like Regieleki, though. Stupid fast. Cool, just thing of lightning. Definitely going to go in the B tier with the... He's a really cool design. And it's not that Reggie Drago isn't a cool design. It really just bugs me that the best they could do to make a Dragon Reggie was to make, like, the core of a Reggie in, like, the jaws of a fake dragon head. And then it gets to me more because we come back to what I was saying about, like, Reggie Ice or Reg Ice and how I like the symmetry of it compared to, like, Reggie Rock. And this thing just really, I don't dislike it enough. I feel like it's a B minus, but yeah, it's just kind of a, I feel like it was a really big miss for a good Dragon Reggie design. Then we got the 2 horse. This is Glacier, I think. It's okay. I mean, I pretty much chose this one because I liked the whole ice aspect and the fact that it looked like it had cool ice armor on it. It's just going in C tier just because it wasn't really anything I cared about, and it definitely doesn't deserve to go up there with the Pokemon in B tier. Same thing with this one. What was it called? Ghost Horse. Yeah. The purple's cool, but the design just wasn't working for me. And speaking of designs that wasn't working for me, Calyrex, I think this thing was called, the little goat alien, did not like this thing. The story that you had to go through with it took so fucking long to get through, and it just wasn't, I just did not enjoy it, and I did not like this thing either. And then the fact that he rode, as a knight, he rode either the ice horse or the ghost horse, it was just kind of like, what? It was so weird. The horses make it better enough for them to go in D tier, but I still hate this thing. Then we got Enamorus. This was a legendary that goes along, I don't remember how it goes along with the trio, the Genie trio from Gen 5, but it goes with them. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. It's not really a design I like. I'm going to leave it in D tier. And then I really don't like its Therian form. It just looks like a thing that just belongs to another franchise. We'll just put it that way. And then we're moving on to the final generation, Gen 9, and we got, what is this, Wo-Chin, I think this one was, the little slug thing. I don't hate it. He definitely looks like a thing of the apocalypse. I guess he can go in C tier. He's not terrible, but it's also kind of not a great design, in my opinion. This one, though, I really did like. I'm blanking on their names so hard right now. This is also a longer video, and it's late that I'm trying to even finish this one. I do like this one, though. I almost want to put him in B tier. I think he can go in B tier. I like that he's kind of like this, again, like a saber-toothed tiger, but of ice. And then his fangs are also daggers. Like, he's cool. And out of the 4, he was definitely the one that I was most excited to find. That was a whole other thing that I started finding these things just randomly exploring. I was like, holy shit, these gotta be to something. And they damn sure were. Then we got the weird, like, antelope one. Whatever that, what, I don't know. I don't like this one. I don't like his design. It's really weird. And it's definitely my least favorite of the 4. We got the little fish one. This one, it just looks like a little ass goldfish, but it's a little fancy goldfish. He's gonna go in C tier because I don't hate it, I don't dislike it, but also it's like, really, this is legendary, really? Then speaking of legendaries, we got Miraidon and Koraidon. These things are just gonna go in. I feel like they're just gonna go in C tier to me. Like, they're your basic motorbicycle Pokemon. There's nothing wrong with them, but I just don't really care for them. I was much more interested in Miraidon when I was planning to get Pokemon Violet. He looks like a cooler Pokemon, but either way, both their motorbicycle forms just look dumb. And Koraidon does have more of like that ancient, like feathered kind of look, but they just, I don't know, they just weren't that interesting. And then just the fact that they're just kind of like legendaries you just ride around everywhere, it just was really weird. Then we've got Okidogi, I think this one's called. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about these things. The story was really weird. It's basically three... I don't know why these are even legendaries. 3 legendaries that bullied another legendary and stole its masks. Like, they're just really weird, and they look even weirder. Especially Monkey Dory. This thing's going in F tier because I just don't like this thing. It just is easily the weirdest of the 3. Personally, the bird form is the one I like the most. That one can go up in C tier, I guess. I don't really think I'll ever use any of them for anything, but at least the bird form has kind of, you know, it has somewhat of a design to it that just doesn't look like a weird thing with a scarf or a little thing around its head. It actually looks like something. So it's got that going for it, I guess. Then we got Ogerpon. I don't know. I don't even know where to put this thing. I don't hate its designs. It's just kind of like... I feel like all 4 of its masks can go in C tier. And we're pretty much running out of space at this point. Because there are so many Pokemon. We've had some grace the A tier. We haven't had any recent ones grace the S tier, but I mean, I've grown up with Pokemon since the 90s. So eventually, I mean, they're going to come out with so many Pokemon that it's like, it's hard to compete with the things that I've had for years and years. And some of these designs really, it's like they just didn't even try. Then lastly, we have, and the name is blanking on me, we've got the turtle thing from Gen 9. It's going to be in the Indigo disc that comes out, I believe, next Friday. And, I mean, this thing's okay. It's just a little weird turtle thing. I don't really feel anything towards this form. It's definitely its super fancy, shiny, like, turtle form that I like. I don't want to put it up in A tier because I don't think it's that great yet. Maybe my feelings will change towards it once I get to see it in game. It could go in A tier. I think it's B plus because it's this really cool looking fucking turtle. But I mean, we've just got the more or less the one image of it, so we don't even know how it looks in game to really have much more of an opinion on it. So I think a solid B tier is good for this one. And that's going to do it for a very long-winded tier list. Wow, are we getting some fucking... We're getting too many legendaries at this point. I mean, it's cool because legendaries are a cool thing, but it's like, some of the generations have too many. Like, we started out with just 4, then we had 5, And then we moved on to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then it keeps going up with the exception of, like I said, Gen 6 had 3 legendaries. They just didn't care. And then with Gen 9 we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Which actually that may not even be the generation with the most, but it's just we're getting to the point where there's almost 100 different legendaries. And I mean, like, the turtle one's cool. It's Tapa. I don't know. I feel like I'm close to it, but I just can't picture its name in my tired brain. I feel like this list did better as far as trying not to put so many Pokemon in S tier. We only ended with 8 in S tier, 8 out of almost 100. I think that's pretty solid. Majority were in B and C tier, and then we didn't put that many in D and F. I feel like this is a little more balanced. I tried really, really not to put too many in S tier, and I'm sure at some point somebody's toes were stepped on, but there were so many legendaries for me to get through that I just didn't hear your cries. You can feel free, though, to let me know where we did you wrong in those comments down below, and perhaps we can have a civil conversation about it.